So if your goal is to improve your physique, change the way that your body looks for the better, so you like what you see in the mirror, just know that not all training is created equal. In today's video, I'm going to rank 5 of the most common training methodologies that I see people using. Bodybuilding, calisthenics, CrossFit, high rocks, and just plain old cardio. And I'm going to rank them based on one thing only. How effective are they at improving your physique? Not fitness, not performance, not strength, not how fun they are, not which is the most popular. How well do they change your physique? And I've built a quite simple scoring system so that it's not just my opinion, it's grounded in some actual data. So what is that scoring system then? Well, research tells us pretty much what we need to change our physique, to improve our physique. And so each style, each modality gets scored across 5 categories. A yes to the question gets a point, and no is no points. No half marks, not it kind of does it. So number 1, can you train close to failure? Muscle growth occurs when an exercise is taken to within about 5 reps or less closer to failure. Those last few reps when you're starting to grind it out, you can see a bit of a grimace creeping in, the weight's slowing down despite how quickly you try to move it. Those are the ones that are really creating change. Number 2, can you progressively overload? Is there a system in place to do more reps, more weight, more sets, whatever it is, to progress the amount that you can do over time? Because ultimately, if this isn't improving over time, then I guess you're just maintaining. Number 3, can you target specific muscle groups easily? Again, a big part of improving your physique for a lot of people is developing certain body parts, things that maybe are lacking, things that you're not as happy with. So are you able to target those muscle groups specifically and develop them in a way that you want? 4, is there adequate mechanical tension? We spoke about this in the previous video. The force that your muscles are having to generate once the reps start getting difficult. This is when mechanical tension is higher, and certain training systems lend themselves better to creating this than others. And number 5, is the fatigue worth the stimulus? Every session costs you something in terms of how much it's going to take to recover from it, in terms of your joints, your energy systems, your nervous system. The best training methodologies will maximize your muscle growth stimulus whilst trying to minimize the overall fatigue. If a session leaves you wiped out for 3 days and actually didn't generate much growth stimulus, that's not a great trade when we're talking about physique. So the maximum score then is going to be 5 out of 5. It is worth mentioning that 2 things overall go into creating a good looking physique. One is, do you have adequate muscle? But number 2 is that muscle obvious enough? Is there definition there due to a low enough level of body fat? That is going to be taken care of by diet predominantly. And so diet, body fat isn't going to be discussed in this video. So number 1, let's start with the obvious one then, bodybuilding. Now here I'm just talking about bodybuilding style of training, which is pretty much classic resistance training. I'm not saying you need to want to compete as a bodybuilder. You're going to want to eat like a bodybuilder or live like them, but we're just talking about training like them, perhaps without the steroids. So number 1, train close to failure. Yep, that is pretty much the whole point. Number 2, progressive overload. Yep, again, any good bodybuilding style plan will have progressive overload built in through one of many available systems. 3, target specific muscle groups. Yes, as long as you're choosing exercises correctly, there is a whole host available to you, and you choose the ones which suit you best. And number 5, lastly, fatigue to stimulus ratio. Now, this partly depends on the quality of the programming and how sensible the split is and the program is that you're following. But on the face of it, as long as it's a well-designed program, it should have a pretty optimal stimulus to fatigue ratio. So there we go, 5 out of 5. Now, you're probably not that shocked by that the training style that is designed to develop your body gets the highest possible score for improving your body. But I guess the interesting part is going to be seeing how everything else stacks up against it. Now, the caveat is that bodybuilding alone does very little for performance, does very little for fitness. It is purely designed to develop physique, which, yes, is what we're talking about, but it's never going to make you a well-rounded, total athletic individual. Number 2, CrossFit. Constantly varied functional movement. Was all the rage a few years ago. Has slowly been becoming less popular, especially as high rocks have started to overtake it, in my opinion. But let's look into it still. Training close to failure. Now, I would argue that CrossFit athletes do train close to failure, but the thing that's often failing isn't the target muscle group. It's actually often just more general fatigue. Sometimes your cardio gives out. It's very rarely a specific muscle group that just can't do anymore. I'm not going to give it a point for that one. Number 2, progressive overload. Now, I guess a lot of CrossFit athletes do track their numbers, but the whole concept of constantly varied means it's quite difficult to progressively overload certain lifts because they're often not being repeated week after week. Some boxes may do this better than others, but as a training system as a whole, I would say it's not designed with progressive overload in mind, at least not from a muscle building perspective. Conditioning, maybe. Number 3, targets specific muscle groups. Again, no, you get whatever the WOD of the day is. So yeah, if your side delts need improving, you're gonna have to do some extra work after class, I'm afraid. Number 4, mechanical tension. Now this is one that I would say, yes, actually, there's a lot of barbell work done in CrossFit. So there can be quite significant amounts of mechanical tension created, especially with things like squats and deadlifts. Perhaps the only downside is that the focus on a lot of reps is just completing it rather than trying to necessarily work a specific muscle group as well as possible and create tension in that muscle group. But I will still give it a point for that one anyway. So 1 point so far. Lastly, fatigue to stimulus ratio. This one for me is a definite no. I've done a few CrossFit classes myself and was absolutely rinsed. The fatigue was so high. And yes, it may have created a stimulus, like I say, for conditioning development, maybe increased muscular endurance, increased VO2 max, but from a muscle building, from a growth stimulus, it's just not there, especially in comparison to the fatigue. So CrossFit has scored a 1. Now, I actually really like CrossFit. I enjoy that style of training, and it definitely creates some incredible athletes. But as a physique development tool, often the physique comes as a byproduct, almost by accident. It's definitely not guaranteed in the way that it is with something like bodybuilding. Number 3, we've got high rocks. Now, I actually did my first ever high rocks earlier on this year, so I've got some experience with it. And there were some decent physiques there as well at the competition. But does that mean that high rocks is an effective tool for developing yours? Well, let's get into the scores. Training close to failure. No, again, a bit like CrossFit, you might be getting close to failure, but it's often more general fatigue that's going to make you give up, not fatigue of a specific muscle group. Progressive overload, well, you are chasing improvements, but that's improvements in terms of speed, not in terms of weight, not in terms of number of reps. So not the kind of progressive overload we're chasing for muscle growth. Target specific muscle groups, no, not really. You've got a very specific set of movements that are predominantly lower body focused, and that's kind of it really. Mechanical tension, I would say perhaps the sled push generates some good mechanical tension in the legs, but overall, again, it's pretty lacking and predominantly focused on more high rep endurance work. So again, it's a no on this one. And lastly, fatigue to stimulus. Again, a bit like CrossFit, the fatigue is high, but there's really no muscle building stimulus there. So it's a 0 for high rocks. I reckon that one's going to go down like a lead balloon. Yes, there were some people there with great physiques, but I could almost guarantee that they had the great physiques before they got into high rocks. And now they've built up their endurance on the foundations that they already had. They haven't built those physiques through high rocks. They had it already, and then they've now got into high rocks since. Next up, calisthenics. Again, this had quite a popular spell. It has died down just a little bit. Ultimately, calisthenics is just bodyweight exercises. Pull-ups, dips, push-ups, different progressions of those movements, all the way through to some of the crazy flag things that you see people doing, which I definitely can't. So, train close to failure? Absolutely. Pull-ups, dips, push-ups, all very easy to take close to failure and effective as well. Progressive overload? Again, either by doing more reps, more difficult variations, adding some weight to them in the form of a weight belt or a dumbbell in between your legs, whatever it is. Yes, technically that's not body weight anymore, but that's fine. Target specific muscle groups? Yes, to a degree. I'd say it's all slightly more upper body focused in the sense of pull-ups, push-ups, dips are quite useful. When we get onto lower body, yes, we've got things like Bulgarian split squats, which can be good for beginners. You can do pistol squats, which are a very tough exercise. I can't do them personally, but there's just not the same amount of variety to target individual muscle groups as something like bodybuilding. It's close, and if we were doing half, I'd probably give it a half, but we're not, so it's a no on this one. Mechanical tension, yep, definitely. Say pull-ups, dips for me, I feel a huge amount of mechanical tension on those. It's a definite yes on that one. And stimulus to fatigue ratio, I would say it's a good trade-off here on these. You can train this quite hard and quite often and still feel pretty fresh as you go about your day-to-day life. So for calisthenics, it's a 4. It's never going to be on the same level as something like bodybuilding. But on the plus side, it requires minimal equipment, can potentially be done at home. Workouts can often be quite quick. Perhaps one of the few downsides is it can be quite difficult. Learning to do pull-ups is quite difficult. Learning to do dips is quite difficult. So it can require you either being light already so that the exercises feel easier, or you've got a decent foundation of strength in place to begin with. And lastly, we've got cardio. Running, cycling, rowing, whatever it is. Especially this time of year, you see all the runners out, it's very popular. And the amount of times I've had people say, oh, I've put a bit of a break on lifting weights at the moment, I'm going to focus on my running. Running is great and I enjoy it myself, but mechanical tension, 0. Progressive overload, 0 from a muscle building perspective. We're not talking about fitness here. Target specific muscle groups, 0. Train close to failure, 0. Mechanical tension, 0. And fatigue to stimulus, well, there's no muscle building stimulus there, so the ratio, of course, is going to be poor. So overall, again, from a physique development point of view, cardio gets a 0. Now, the caveat is that I think cardio is phenomenal for your health. It should absolutely be in your program. And I try to make sure that all of my clients do some as well. But there's a difference between something being important and good for you and healthy, and then something improving the way that your body looks. So there we have it then, the final rankings. Bodybuilding, 5 out of 5, first place. In second, we've got calisthenics with 4 out of 5. In third, we've got high rocks with a 1 out of 5. And in joint last, we've got high rocks and cardio. If I had to separate those two, I would still put high rocks just above cardio because at least you're getting some resistance training built into it. So I don't think it's fair to say they're both on a level playing field. High rocks has got to come a little bit above it, but neither are going to be effective tools for developing your physique. At the end of the day, high rocks, as much as I enjoyed the competition that I did, it is just a big gym class. And I've said before that those gym classes are no good for your physique either. So the 3 takeaways from this then. Look at the top 2, bodybuilding and calisthenics. What do they both have in common? They both have you lifting meaningful resistance, close to failure, pushing hard, and a clear and obvious progression structure in place. 2, a low score isn't a bad thing here. It's a bad thing from a physique development point of view. But I think all of these that I've mentioned are good, fun, interesting training styles. I've done all of them myself, and I'd recommend people try all of them as well, because physique development is just one piece of that fitness puzzle. And yes, it's an important piece for a lot of people, but it's not everything. And number 3, and this is the one that people get wrong, is it's not a choose one and that's it. That's the great thing about training. You can do them all. You can either split your week up and focus on different formats across different days, or you can have periods of time where you go all in on one, and then another period where you switch on to another one and rotate between them as you go throughout the year. That's what keeps things fun and interesting and exciting. So I imagine this will have ruffled some feathers. If you've got any comments, if you've got any feedback, if you want to argue with me, whack it in the comments below. If not, I'll see you on the next video.